Namaskar, this is Akhilesh Bhargava again. Welcome to Tidbits on Business and Finance with me. As the ILFS edifice threatens to collapse like a pack of cards, more and more instances of glaring financial mismanagement and imprudent financial practices are coming out into the open. Its founder CEO of 30 years, Ravi Parthasarthy, has already taken the easy route. He has resigned on health grounds and is not there on the scene at a time when accountability, answerability was needed the most. We don't even know at the moment who is the real CEO of ILFS there to answer and there where the buck stops. The buck doesn't seem to be stopping anywhere as far as ILFS is concerned at the moment. The group is collapsing under the weight of loans it took. Just ILFS has got loans of over 91,000 crores. One of its subsidiaries is said to have a loan of about 37,000 crores. And this kind of a huge borrowing is not only impractical, it is completely unsustainable. And that explains the reason for the collapse of the group. In lending and borrowing, one of the key parameters of prudence or common sense that is followed is you don't lend beyond a point. In other words, a borrower is required to have a minimum safe amount of capital in a project and thereafter the lender chips in. The more the borrower's equity or capital in a project, the safer it is for the lender. In other words, it is important for the borrower to have his skin in the game. If a project has got too much of a loan and too few a borrower's capital, and if a default happens which is very imminent, the borrower thereafter is not even bothered about it. Raghuram Rajan calls such kind of projects as zombie projects. Projects where the borrower's skin in the game, the borrower's capital was very little, and when a default or a failure of the project happened, neither the borrower was bothered and nor was the lender. There was no MIBAP of that project, which is what ILFS sees in its various projects today. And this over borrowing and over lending has been the bane of sectors like the power sector, real estate sector and infrastructure sector in India, where surprisingly lenders were eager to lend beyond any sustainable limit. Borrowers' skin in the game, borrowers' capital was very low, and failure of the project, default of the bank loan was very imminent. So in some cases projects became zombie, and in some cases where the promoter's equity had been fraudulently even withdrawn or the promoter had no skin in the game, like the case of a Nirav Modi and a Mehul Chokshi, they ran away. But those who suffered the most were the lenders. Those who suffered the most were the common men of India, because when the lender suffered, and if the lender was a public financial institution, it was the borrower's deposits, public deposits at stake. The story of ILFS is something like this. It has borrowed heavily. ILFS has been in the business of infrastructure setting up, infrastructure lending. It has a web of over 169 subsidiaries. We wonder what those subsidiaries were doing, how many were genuine, how many were shell entities, we really don't know. But what we know today, as time passes by, is all of them were loaded with debt in some manner or the other for putting up projects, and the debt gearing was very high. In other words, the promoter's stake was very low. What kind of a stake should have been there of the promoter? In an infrastructure project, financial prudence says that if the borrower puts in 1 rupee, the lender should not give more than 5 rupees. In fact, the lender should not give in more than 4 rupees. So the borrower should have at least 15 to 20% of the capital or the fund invested by way of his own money. We call it a debt equity ratio of 5. In the case of ILFS, the debt equity ratio had touched 18. In other words, ILFS hardly put in any money in the project, and if by any chance the project had been padded by way of over budgeting, it meant that ILFS truly put in nothing in the game. A collapse was imminent. They say that against loans of over 91,000 crores, the real capital of ILFS is a mere 5,000. So against 5,000 crores, it managed to borrow 91,000 crores. This was completely unsustainable even in the infrastructure project where repayments take place over a long period of time because of the longer tenure of the projects undertaken. ILFS has been promoted by LIC and other institutions. It used to be projected as a quasi-government organization, and maybe that is the reason lenders were ever eager to lend to it. But then ILFS also is supposed to have some of the best financial brains. We wonder what were those brains doing, especially when those employees of ILFS were being paid like private sector employees. The top 3 executives of ILFS last year were paid remuneration to the tune of 47 crores. Such was the remuneration they took for the financial malpractice and mismanagement that ILFS undertook. It just got greedy borrowing. Somewhere the personal ambitions of Ravi Parthasarthy and his ilk ensured that they undertook project after project without putting in their own capital. The complete collapse of ILFS was imminent. We think that while it is very clear that there has been financial mismanagement and malpractices at ILFS which have led to its downfall and the payment crisis that the NBFC and banking industry faces today because of ILFS, but we think that with these kind of loans taken, it is important to have an investigation conducted by the likes of SFIO or MCA to understand whether apart from financial mismanagement, negligent management of money, was there also fraud, malfeasance and corruption, which could be very likely. Otherwise, why should all the top executives of ILFS be in a hurry to resign and be not in the scene to explain the crisis that they have landed India's NBFC and banking system in because of a payment crisis which triggered off because of heavy, unsustainable, unimaginable borrowing by ILFS and its subsidiaries. This is Akhilesh Bhargava signing off till we meet again. Namaskar.